Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, and we are on the cutting edge of what is hip. We're definitely not. But one thing I've noticed is, of course, when the Barnes & Noble Criterion sale kicks up, every physical media YouTube channel I follow puts out a video about it with recommendations and hauls and stuff. And I used to do that, and I still kind of do little haul videos. But I haven't as much recently. But I got to say that when I heard from my friend Alex today that the sale had started, I went right on down to two Barnes & Nobles, and one of them still didn't have everything I needed, but I got some stuff. And I'm going to go through a big pile of Criterions here. And we're going to talk about some stuff that I recommend, and some stuff I picked up. So, and some of this stuff is going to be stuff you'll already have if you're kind of keeping up to date with the Criterion collection. But, you know, if you're looking for other stuff. So I'm going to have both. Basically, I'll have new titles for people that are on the edge, on the cutting edge, as you say. And then I'll have some older favorites that I really just took literally like 2 minutes, looked at my collection and went bing, 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 and pulled out some titles that I probably recommended in the past, but it's been a while. So I'll start with a couple new titles that I'm very excited about, and then some that I got today. But these are all on sale now during the Criterion sale. But I'm going to start with this one here, Midnight. And this is from, I believe, 1939. And absolutely delightful screwball comedy from director Mitchell Leisen, who did a ton of great films, but as is sort of touched on in the commentary, a director who doesn't get a ton of credit these days, and kind of never did. And it is a little bit of a shame because I've heard from the writer side, folks that were not necessarily fans of him, and I'm talking about like Preston Sturges and Billy Wilder, and these guys didn't necessarily love what Mitchell Eisen did with their work, but that said, I still feel like he's a director of note who did a lot of really interesting movies, a lot of great comedies, including this one, which I really count among the best screwball comedies in the 1930s, and that is a heck of a crop, right? So this one's never been available on Blu-ray before, and finally got a nice Blu-ray from Criterion. Other films of note from Mitchell Eisen are things like Easy Living, which had a Preston Sturges script with Jean Arthur and Ray Milland and Edward Arnold. I adore that. That came out from Kino on Blu-ray. Remember the Night, which is another Preston Sturges script. That one's with Barbara Stanwyck and Fred McMurray, a year before they did Double Indemnity, I want to say, or the same year, one of the two. He worked with McMurray a lot, and apparently made passes at him. I'll talk about that in a minute. But Hold Back the Dawn, also really good with Charles Boyer. Really solid director. Anyway, so according to Criterion's site, they say screwball comedy doesn't get any more effortlessly elegant and gleefully irreverent than this roulette wheel of romantic deception, gleaming with cunning, wit, and continental elan. A culture-clad Claudette Colbert, couture-clad, is divine as a penniless American chorus girl who crashes Parisian high society by posing as a wealthy young Hungarian baroness, but both a scheming nobleman, John Barrymore, and a smitten taxi driver, Don Amici, are soon onto her game. Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett's sophisticated script, a typically subversive blend of fairy tale escapism and caustic social observation, and the pitch-perfect direction from master craftsman Mitchell Eisen yield a topsy-turvy Cinderella tale, a story with a cynical bite. This is true. And I think, for those that don't know, obviously Billy Wilder goes on to direct a lot of movies, but Charles Brackett was one of his main collaborators on some of his best films, including Sunset Boulevard, including The Lost Weekend, Five Graves to Cairo. They worked together on Bluebeard's Eighth Wife, which was a Lubitsch film that they did just prior to this. The Major and the Minor. Hold Back the Dawn is theirs too. A Foreign Affair. It's another Wilder that is under discussed. Ninotchka. And Howard Hawks' Ball of Fire, which I think is one of the great screwball comedies of the 1940s. And still needs a really nice Blu-ray, by the way. But both of them have fairy tale roots. Like Ball of Fire is a sort of reworking of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is sort of a Cinderella tale, but definitely turned on its head, right? It's very different in that sense. And I adore this. I was so excited. This is a new 4K digital restoration. And I just love this movie. So like she comes from Monte Carlo to Paris, and she gets picked up by this taxi driver played by Don Amici, who at first is like, no, I'm not going to help you. Because she's like, could you just drive me around? I don't have any money, but I'm going to get a job. And once I get a job, I'll pay you back, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, nope. And then it starts raining and he feels bad. And he's like, all right, come in my cab and I'll take you around. And so they go to a couple places and it's not looking good. And then he offers to let her spend the night at his place. And she's like, nuh-uh, I ain't doing that. Nope. And then he's like, no, it's not. I got to drive the cab at night. You can just stay there while I'm working. Don't worry about it. And then he's going to try and go set her up, and she ends up sort of running away from him, and she runs into this high society party and is able to sneak in, and it's being put on by Hedda Hopper, the famous gossip or Hollywood columnist. But among the attendees are Mary Astor and John Barrymore, this like high society couple, and he notices her like right away. That's Barrymore. And part of the fun of this movie to me is just watching Barrymore's reactions, just seeing his face as he reacts to different things, like he immediately is onto her that something's up. She's pretending to be, she calls herself Baroness Czerny after the cab driver Don Amici's name, and suddenly he is sneakily setting her up as the Baroness, and we find out it's because his wife Mary Astor is into this other dude who, as soon as she gets pulled into a back room to play bridge with them, and as soon as he sees her, this other guy, he lights up, and Barrymore's character is like, aha, I can maybe marry her off to this guy, or at least get him out of my hair, because I'll never get a divorce. And immediately he notices that his wife is very jealous of Claudette Colbert, and so then it's just sort of him behind the scenes trying to help her, and they kind of just keep making stuff up until it gets just ridiculous by the end of the movie. And it's just such a beautiful, wonderful, funny movie, and very underseen. And Mitchell Eisen's very underappreciated. So really happy to see this get a nice Blu-ray finally from Criterion. One of my favorite releases of the year for sure so far. It has some commentary track from one author and film critic, Michael Koreski, and he does a lovely job with the track, talking about the cast and their origins, and much about Mitchell Eisen, including touching on his queerness and how it affected his output in Hollywood, and how he's ultimately been underrated, even amongst other queer directors like James Whale and George Cukor and things like that. So it's a really nice commentary. I really dug it. And then on top of that, they have a 14-minute excerpt of an interview from, I think, 1969 with director Mitchell Eisen. There's also a Lux Radio Theater adaptation of the film from 1940 and a film essay by film critic David Cairns as well included. But the interview is great. It's 14 minutes, and Mitchell Eisen talks about working with Barrymore, who Barrymore sounds like such a character. He said he had to have his wife in the movie. She's in the movie, and they show where she is, who she plays. It's a smaller part, but had to have her on the movie because otherwise he'd be drunk all the time. And how there was an outside set that they used, and that Barrymore couldn't be bothered to go to the bathroom, so he'd just go behind a bush on the set, and so that the set smelled like an old bathroom after they were done, because he just would not be bothered to go. And how Barrymore was notorious for using idiot cards, which I guess is just like cue cards that were hidden that were in his eye line, so he could read the dialogue, and he didn't have to remember it. And there's some great stories about that. He also talks about working with and fighting with Billy Wilder, but not Charles Brackett. Apparently, Charles Brackett was the more calm of the two. Working with Claudette Colbert, how she only wanted to be photographed from one side. I've heard that before. And how he had to try to find a way to hide Mary Astor's pregnancy, which was something he didn't know about before production. But it's a really neat little interview, really affable dude. So nice to hear his voice and get a take from him. But yeah, high recommend for midnight if you are in the market. Okay, next up we have Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. Now this is a Paul Schrader film, and it is from 1985, and it is easily one of the best things he did. Along with Blue Collar, I think I usually called those the two best films that Paul Schrader made. The site says Schrader's visually stunning collage-like portrait of the acclaimed Japanese author and playwright Yukio Mishima, played by Kenagata, investigates the inner turmoil and contradictions of a man who attempted the impossible task of finding harmony among self, art, and society, taking place on the last day of Mishima's life, when he famously committed public seppuku. The film is punctuated by extended flashbacks to the writer's past, as well as gloriously stylized evocations of his fictional works. Now, that's one of the favorite things I love that they've done with this, and I'm sure it's been done before, maybe not before, but since or at some other point, where you take an author and you make it partly autobiographical and then partly autobiographical through work. So it's like, you know, the characters acting out the stories, which also sort of dovetail into his life itself. And I think that's such an interesting idea, and they're very stylish in the way that they're shot, and it's just such a neat work. You know, it's really more ambitious than almost anything else Schrader did, and he did a lot of things where he really, you know, took on some pretty, you know, big topics, some big characters, but this, I think, has just got an ambition to it that is above and beyond. A rich cinematography by John Bailey, exquisite sets and costumes by Eiko Ishioka, and an unforgettable, highly influential score by the great Philip Glass, who would do, you know, a bunch of other scores. It worked with Errol Morris and, you know, Koyaanisqatsi and things like that. Just beautiful scores, and that helps the movie too. So it's got a lot to elevate it, right? Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters is a tribute to its subject, a bold work of art in its own right. So this is a 4K upgrade, and it does look better than it did a little on Blu-ray. This includes the 4K and a Blu-ray, 2 alternate English narrations, including one by actor Roy Scheider, which is cool. Audio commentary featuring Schrader and producer Alan Poole. Program on the making of the film featuring Bailey, producers Tom Luddy and Mata Yamamoto, composer Philip Glass, and production designer Eiko Ishioka. Program on Yukio Mishima featuring his biographer John Nathan and friend Donald Ritchie. Audio interview with co-screenwriter Chico Schrader. An interview excerpt from 1966 featuring Mishima talking about writing, which is really cool. The Strange Case of Yukio Mishima, 1985 documentary about the author, plus an essay by critic Kevin Jackson, a piece on the film's censorship in Japan, photographs, and Ishioka's sets. So yeah, this is a beautiful, like, slip box, and, you know, of course you get both the 4K and the Blu-ray here. As I said, the 4K is pretty stunning. And I'm just going to read, I mean, this is a pretty hefty book, actually. I am just going to read from the book real quick. Cast, credits, Pen and the Sword by Kevin Jackson. Let me look at that. So, and then there's another one called Banned in Japan. The idea of self-fashioning, of deliberately taking the raw materials of one's body and mind and transforming them into a work of art has been with us at least since the Renaissance, yet no one, not even Oscar Wilde, has so rigorously pursued that grail as Yukio Mishima. Wilde may have quipped about living up to his blue china, but he let his once graceful body grow slack and bloated, and his delicate features droop into jowls. Mishima spent countless hours at the gym, turning himself from a sickly, scrawny youth into a powerful muscle man. Wilde talked subversively, but allowed his subversion to seem like a mere game of naughty jokes and paradox-mongering. Mishima turned his strange political ideals into action and became the general of his own private army. That's a whole other story that's in here. That's one of the stories. Anyway, Wilde ultimately allowed forces of intolerance to catch him and ruin him. Mishima composed the final act of his life in his head and then wrote it in his own blood with a samurai sword. However much that glory act might repel us, it had a terrible lucidity. Really, really solid, just great work of art kind of film from Paul Schrader. I want to say you can feel the Bresson influence in this, but I'd have to do a side by side. But yeah, really, really worth a pickup if you like Paul Schrader movies, and it seems to be one that's still kind of off the radar for some of his fans. So let's go through my new pickups, and then I've got some recommendations I'll do really quick. So this, of course, is the Brazil 4K, which I grabbed today at Barnes & Noble. Like I said, I wanted to grab Sorcerer. I had to order that from Amazon because the 4K was not available at either Barnes & Noble I checked. It's not available on the website. Clearly a really hot ticket, that one. So I was surprised to be able to get Brazil, but this is a new 4K digital restoration of Terry Gilliam's director's cut, supervised by Gilliam. One 4K disc, presented in Dolby Vision HDR, 2 Blu-rays with special features. I mean, this is one of the great sets, and one of the great documentaries. Audio commentary by Gilliam. What is Brazil? Rob Hedden's on-set documentary is just amazing. The Battle of Brazil documentary about the film's contentious release, hosted by Jack Matthews and based on his book by the same name. Love Conquers All version, the studio's 94-minute happy ending cut of Brazil with commentary by Brazil expert David Morgan. Plus an essay by film critic David Sterrett as well. Very excited to check this out in 4K. This is obviously a classic in its own right, and been with the Criterion collection since Laserdisc, and I got that beautiful, gigantic Laserdisc set at one point, and so it's neat to see it come full circle all the way around to 4K now again. That's very exciting for me. Next pickup was this is Donald Cammell and Nicholas Roeg's performance, and this is sort of a classic cult movie title that I've known about through Danny Perry's cult movie books. In fact, I might just pull out Guide for the Film Fanatic and see if I can read if he's got a listing for it. I would think he would, because it's in one of the cult movies books, and there's a full-on essay. Can't remember if it's in the first one or the second one, but that was definitely a movie that I saw and started to understand what cult movies were. Oh yeah, he's got a lot to say here about this. From the first frame, one feels that directors Nicholas Roeg and Donald Cammell, who wrote the screenplay, are resting their dirtiest fingers at the backs of our throats. They bombard us with brutal images, a forced head shaving that's like an amputation, a whipping, a beating, a bullet entering a skull that seem designed to make us nauseous. Their film may be a personally successful rendering of a personal vision, but it's no labor of love. It's an arrogant, needless slap at our viewing sensibilities, an odious, amoral work. It's oozing with decadence, is as manifest behind the camera as it is on screen. Anyway, you get a sense he doesn't necessarily love this one. That was one thing I love about Danny, is he would write about cult films that he acknowledged the cult of, even if he was not personally a fan of them. I think it's a very interesting, very experimental 1970s. This is from 1970. It feels almost like a 1960s film, really. I mean, it is, in effect. But yeah, so this is the new 4K. And the grimy criminal underworld and hedonistic rock and roll counterculture of the late 1960s London collide in this mind-scrambling kaleidoscopic freakout. On the run from his vengeful boss, a ruthless gangster, James Fox, hides out in the Notting Hill home of a reclusive rock star, Mick Jagger, and his companions, Anita Pallenberg and Michelle Breton, who open the doors of his perception as the lines between reality and fantasy, male and female persona, and self dissolve in a hallucinogenic haze. Built around Jagger's most magnetic narrative film performance, the visionary collaboration between Donald Cammell and Nicholas Roeg is a daringly transgressive, endlessly influential journey to the dark side of Bohemia. And this is a new 4K digital restoration with uncompressed binaural audio, original UK version soundtrack, one 4K UHD with Dolby Vision HDR, and one Blu-ray with special features in the film. Donald Cammell, The Ultimate Performance from 1998, a documentary by Kevin MacDonald and Chris Rodley. Influence and Controversy, Making Performance from 2007. New visual essay about David Litvinoff, the film's dialogue coach and technical advisor. Interviews with the actors, program on the overdubbing for the US version of the film. Memo from Turner featuring on-set footage. And an essay by film critic Ryan Gibley and a 1995 article by scholar Peter Wolin. So definitely wanted to pick this up. Had to wait for the sale, but excited to rewatch it again. Definitely very trippy. Be an interesting follow to Brazil ultimately. And lastly, another one that was like a big indie sort of darling in 1993 when I was in the midst of my tenure at video store work. And I remember this coming out and there being quite a little to do about it. And it is a really fascinating and wonderful and just, captivating movie. A rare film biography as boldly unconventional as its subject. Writer-director Francois Girard's visionary portrait of iconoclastic world-renowned pianist Glenn Gould explodes the conventions of the form to illuminate the brilliant mind and innermost obsessions of a singular artist across 32 vignettes encompassing everything from dramatic sketches to documentary interviews to avant-garde animation. 32 short films about Glenn Gould pieces together the story of Gould's trajectory from a child prodigy to celebrated concert pianist who turned his back on public performance to pursue his all-consuming fascination with recording technology. Led by a tour de force performance by Colm Fiore and underscored by Gould's landmark recordings of Bach's Goldberg variations, Girard's film daringly deconstructs the enigma of genius. Yeah, it is one of the most unique biopics, if you even want to call it that you'll ever see. And so I picked up the 4K. I don't think this had a Blu-ray, but it might have. But this is definitely a nice version. New 4K digital restoration supervised by director Francois Girard. One 4K, one Blu-ray with the film and features. New audio commentary featuring Girard and co-writer actor Don McKellar, which I'm excited about. Don McKellar, a Canadian actor who was in Cronenberg films and made his own films. A movie called Last Night, which is really interesting and which I don't think has a Blu-ray yet. But I like Don McKellar a lot. So cool that he's in this. New conversation between Girard and filmmaker Adam Egoyan. I think Don McKellar might be in some Egoyan films too because he's Canadian. So that I want to see. Glenn Gould off the record and Glenn Gould on the record, companion programs from 1959, archival interviews with actor Colm Fiore and producer Niv Fitchman, essay by author and film critic Michael Koreski, who of course did the commentary on Midnight. So those are my pickups. Now I'm going to whiz through my, recommendations, if you will, because a lot of this is going to be stuff you already have, right? If you've been keeping up, you don't really need me to tell you that After Hours is fantastic and one of my favorite movies of all time, and that this 4K looks great, and I cannot recommend highly enough After Hours. It's just probably my favorite Scorsese film, and I think it's just one of the most brilliant dark comedies ever made. Has an incredibly cool circular narrative, and a great performance from Griffin Dunn, and so many cameos that it's just kind of ridiculous. But I adore it. But I feel like this film's gotten plenty of attention in the years leading up to this release that you probably already own this. But if you don't, please, you got to get After Hours, okay? Another recent one, but another favorite of mine is Night Moves, the Gene Hackman film, directed by the great Arthur Penn, written by Alan Sharp. A very neat deconstruction of the private eye genre, where Gene Hackman plays a ex-football player turned private eye who gets put on a missing person case, and it's all sort of this really interesting, like I said, deconstruction pastiche of film noir and the conventions of those movies, and how, if you think about it, it makes sense that a lot of cases cannot be solved in a traditional way and can't be understood, or motivations can't be fully figured out. And there's a lot of things about the movie that has a certain ambiguity that I love. It's also one of my favorite Gene Hackman performances. So really, really great stuff. A really nice 4K with a new audio commentary by Matthew Osprey Gear, author of Mosby Confidential, which is a book I still need to pick up. Jennifer Warren interviewed here, Arthur Penn from an episode of Cinema Showcase, and another interview with Penn from a 95 documentary about him. Just a great release. High recommend for this one if you like 70s private eye films and stuff. Okay, now I've got two that go together here, I think. Defending Your Life and A Matter of Life and Death. Both are about an afterlife of sorts. Defending Your Life may be the one people are most familiar with. The Albert Brooks film with he and Meryl Streep, which definitely showed some influence on Beau is Afraid, the Ari Aster film, in particular near the end. But yeah, it's a really beautiful love story about two souls that find each other in limbo, and this idea of, trying to transcend your earthly existence by overcoming your fear, and that is how you move on. But just great performance from Brooks and Streep and Rip Torn, who's like the lawyer. You actually go on trial to defend parts of your life, to show that you've overcome your fear, or to have the prosecution, as it were, show how you haven't. And very funny, just an incredibly awesome take on the afterlife. I think it's really, really neat. Also, something I refer to regularly in terms of the food that you eat in the Judgment City, which is the limbo city, is you can't gain weight from eating it, and it's the best tasting food you've ever had, and they also serve it almost instantly. I have a local diner called Millie's Cafe here in Silver Lake that I go to with some regularity, and they are defending your life good and defending your life fast. Like, I order food from them and it comes out in 2 minutes. I swear to God, I'm in Judgment City all over again. It's amazing. Anyway, plug for Millie's Cafe. But so that's Defending Your Life. Now, Matter of Life and Death is a Powell Pressburger movie, also known as Stairway to Heaven. And it is about a RAF pilot played by the great, David Niven, who has like a brief romantic exchange with a radio operator, an American radio operator, played by Kim Hunter, and they basically fall in love within this one exchange as his plane is burning and about to crash, and he jumps out of his plane with no parachute and survives. And we find out it's some kind of a clerical error. It's a mistake on the part of the afterlife, the heaven or the hell, and they try to take him back, but he makes a case for the fact that, like, I've fallen in love now. So because you made this mistake, we've now affected someone else's life, and I'm making a case that I should be left here. And there's another sort of, limbo world trial. I love that this movie is color on Earth, black and white in the limbo heaven type space. And it's just a beautiful story. So well done. Absolutely love it. Great Blu-ray. Definitely worth picking up. One of the better Powell Pressburger movies, and that's also saying something. Dogfight, Nancy Savoca's film with River Phoenix and Lily Taylor, set in the 1960s. An ineffably bittersweet portrait of youth in the 1960s. Nancy Savoca's funny, sensitive tale of love and war etches two vividly alive characters, aspiring San Francisco folk singer Rose, Lily Taylor, and a hot-headed Vietnam-bound Marine, Eddie Birdlace, River Phoenix, who meet on the occasion of a cruelly misogynistic party that's known as a dogfight, where basically Marines, on their way to boot camp, I think to go to Vietnam, try and pick up the ugliest girl and bring them to a bar. And they put a bunch of money in the pot. The girl that's voted the most ugly wins the pot for its person. But of course, the Marines are not telling the women that that's what they're doing. They're just bringing in there to have a good time and be judged. It's pretty gross and it's pretty messed up. And it is I find a pretty remarkable hole for a character to have to dig himself out of, because effectively, I'm just going to say, River Phoenix finds Lily Taylor, he brings her as his date, and almost immediately starts to regret his choice. And once she finds out about it, she's understandably furious and mortified and wants nothing to do with him. and he has started to like her and now has to dig himself out with not only her, but with us, the audience, because we are like, forget this guy. He is just a piece of garbage. And can he do it? Can he pull it off? It's an incredible, deficit, charisma deficit to pull yourself out of as a character. And it becomes a really fascinating, one night love story. And I just adore this film. I was so excited when it came out. And it features music by folk legends Joan Baez, Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, and captures the miracle of human connection while gracefully subverting ideas surrounding machismo, patriotic duty, and the very meaning of America itself. I wish this had been a 4K, but I'll take the Blu-ray. New 2K digital restoration, supervised by director Nancy Savoca. She had a great year a couple years ago, by the way. Maybe it's last year. Where we got Household Saints, we got True Love, a lot of her really great early works. Audio commentary with Savoca and producer Richard Guay. New interview with Savoca, actor Lily Taylor, conducted by filmmaker Mary Herron. Very cool. New interviews with cinematographer Bobby Bukowski, production designer Lester W. Cohen, script supervisor Mary Cebulski, music supervisor Jeffrey Kimball, supervising sound editor Tim Squires, and editor John Timbori, as well as an essay by film critic Christina Newland, which is great. So definitely one of my favorite discs the year it came out, and I can't remember what year, but a huge recommend from me, Dogfight. And lastly, Last Picture Show. Now, this is one I'm sure a lot of people picked up, maybe, but if you're on the fence, the selling point for me, and I've said it before on this channel, is that this includes Texasville, the sequel, which I think is great, and I think is a really wonderful compliment to Last Picture Show. It is, many years later, but this includes the black and white director's cut. So it's effectively a version of the film that's not really been seen prior to this release. And so the film, I think, was a bit maligned when it came out, like circa 1988, I think, is when it came out. I really adore Texasville. I think it's great. And I think this version really elevates it to not maybe the level of Last Picture Show status, but like up there, and makes this like well worth picking up. I don't think that's a 4K though. I don't remember ultimately if it's a 4K. It may just be a Blu-ray, but one of the greatest special features you'll ever get as a great sequel to an already great movie. So huge recommend for Last Picture Show 4K plus Texasville, and watch Texasville as soon as you can, because it's wonderful. I mean, watch them back to back. It's a great continuation. They got most of the cast back. You're looking at the same town, or the same group of characters years later, what's happened to them. And it's even funnier. I mean, that Last Picture Show is funny, but also bittersweet. This is just more of a comedy. And Annie Potts is one of the new characters. She's married to Jeff Bridges. It's amazing. I love it. So yeah, high recommend for that. So anyway, that'll do it for this Criterion-centric episode. Definitely check out Midnight and Mishima. And Sorcerer, I hope to get. I'm sure you guys are already getting that one, but looking forward to stuff coming from Criterion, including Spinal Tap on 4K. That's not coming till September. But also High and Low getting a 4K in September. We have You Can Count on Me. Now that's getting a 4K at the end of the month. So that one you can get as part of the sale, as well as Carnal Knowledge, the Mike Nichols movie. Now that's also getting a release from Indicator, but I may end up getting both. I think it's a really interesting, if dark, film about romance, ostensibly. And You Can Count on Me is just a great story of siblings, and it's fantastic. I'm so glad that that's getting a 4K. And then of course Barry Lyndon getting a 4K on the 8th, so that's coming up very soon. Lots of good stuff coming from Criterion, lots to look forward to, and lots to grab during this sale. So please enjoy yourself. Let me know what you got and what you're digging from this sale. Thanks so much for listening. Bye bye.